Assalamu alaikum, everybody. This is Officer Romanov Pahlavi, and I am here today to teach you. There's nothing wrong with you, because there's a whole psyop out there right now to pathologize the gifted, the talented, the intellectually resilient, and to call every single one of you autistic, to bar you from believing that you can make more out of yourself or leave the country. So, with that being said, badge number, US FBI QKH77-Romanov, RUGRUVOR88-Khorasan, and of course BND through Deutschland, that is DE BND XR001-Raziel, and then I have Natsec-Stoneblood-Romanov-4, and my relay is INTL-CLEAR-777 Freedom, and then NATO-REGAL-ALPHA is my NATO code. So, assalamu alaikum, everybody. Today I am in the library, as I usually am, and I have two books on autism here. Now, I've only looked through these very, very briefly. I have not looked at them closely. But we're going to look through these books with the eyes of intelligence, okay? Global intelligence. I don't mean my own intelligence, but we're going to look at these books with a new perspective, and I'm going to teach you how to see through propaganda and how it begins at very, very early ages. So, first of all, the term autism is meant to be intentionally vague. It covers people who are profoundly disabled, who can't even speak, who can't even care for themselves, all the way up to super geniuses such as Albert Einstein or, Camus or Nietzsche, Dostoevsky, or any of those people. Funny how both the very bottom of the spectrum and the very top of the spectrum are both considered disabled. But yet our great polymaths such as Beethoven, Paganini, that sort of thing, have also been considered autistic in retrospect. Now here's the funny thing Here's the absolute funny thing about it. We absolutely cannot pass any diagnosis on anybody without a personal interview. So the idea that we can retroactively diagnose famous historical and political figures with any illness whatsoever under modern terminology, when we do not have a time machine to actually question them and see how their minds work in a face-to-face clinical evaluative framework, all those labels are simply projections, a psyop, theory. They can't be proven. You can make anybody in the past be anything. Trust me. I've seen people murdered and their entire personalities rewritten in real time after their deaths. So I know, unfortunately, firsthand how this works. So what we're going to do is we have two books here. We have a young child's book, and then we have a slightly older children's book. So this one is more for, your elementary set in the earlier years, and this would probably be for a little bit older, I guess, like 4th grade. What does it say in the back? Does it say how many ages? No, it says Power Kid Press though. And this one is by amicuspublishing.us. Now these authors who write these truly believe in what they write. The effectiveness in any psyop is in getting the population to believe it without question, support it, and then create evidence around it. We live in a consensus reality. What that means is, my friends, is that our will combined, our thoughts combined, create the reality in which we live. And I don't mean this in just a metaphysical sense. I mean that words shape reality, just in the same way that laws are made out of words and shape reality. When you reaffirm something over and over and over again, when you define it, when you name it, you make it real. If you want to go into a religious context and you look into the Garden of Eden and the idea that, Adam and Eve named all the animals, they defined them. They created the boundaries and the limitations by which an animal is defined. If we look at taxonomic classes, we see that even now, we define what a species is, and what we're finding more and more is that taxonomy is much looser, more complicated, and difficult than we could ever possibly have conceptualized back in the 1800s. Did they even go back to the 1700s? I think it started in the 1800s with taxonomic classifications, going back to Audubon and that sort of thing for various species. But with interbreeding, divergent populations, re-emergent populations, Those taxonomic classifications are constantly being rewritten, constantly. You can see this in ornithology. Ornithology is the study of birds, okay? So with that being said, let's go through what the current definition of autism is that we are teaching our children. And I'm going to give you, when I run into something that seems problematic, we're going to go through it together, okay? So sit on back in this comfy library chair. And this is My Life with Autism, written by Mary Shu, art by Isabel Munoz. And here it is. It's backwards because, well, I'm too lazy to flip these videos, and this is an intelligence video. I'm sure that you guys have means that you can flip this stuff over, and you can look up this book yourself, by all means. So I don't know about the quality of these books. I'm not advocating or dismissing them in any way. I'm talking about the perpetuation of the self-labelization of defectiveness, brokenness, or, otherness that many people are being put into when they're not defective, they're just intellectually gifted. So, that being said, My Life with Autism. Okay. So, it says, "Hi, my name is Zen. I'm a kid, just like you. We might enjoy the same things. I like to draw and play video games. We might have differences, too. I have autism. Let me tell you about my life." Okay, so here, normal kid. I'm normal. I play games like you. I do the same things that you do. Yeah. So let's see where the differences begin. Okay. So, kids who have autism are born with it. Doctors aren't sure what causes it. You can't tell if somebody has autism just by looking at them. You can't tell if somebody's a genius just by looking at them either. The class that I had in high school with the very smartest kids in the school was not the gifted class. It was a remedial physics class where all the burnouts decided to skip gifted and take remedial physics, trying to avoid a particular professor, and I call him a professor even though he was a high school teacher, by the name of Skip Blake. Skip Blake was the hardest teacher in all of Quakertown Community High School, and he actually became one of my closest friends for a long period of time. Skip Blake was hard. He was difficult. And he stood there in the front of the room and he said, "I know all of your IQs. And I know exactly what you tried to do." And you know what he did? He failed nearly every single one of us that were ever in gifted. And the students that actually deserved to be there, he curved the grades in their favor. That was the most difficult D- I ever earned. So despite all of my years on Dean's List or whatever at college, nothing will ever beat that D- I barely scraped by from in remedial physics that I got from Skip Blake. And then years later, I ended up writing a physics paper. So, thank you, Skip. God bless you. Okay, you can't tell if somebody's a genius by looking at them. You can't tell if somebody's smart by looking at them. No, it's not a real condition when the way that it's being applied in the past, I'd say 2 to 3 decades, okay? Autism affects how a person acts, feels, and talks. It affects each person a little differently. People call it the autism spectrum. It means each person with autism has their own talents and needs. Why don't we just replace the word autism with genius, okay? And let's see how this book goes from there. And seriously, I do everything improv. I do not pre-plan my lectures. You see when I pre-plan them, I get very nervous and I'm reading off of a script like this, going, "Oh my God, I hope that my shake likes me." So, I don't have to worry about that. We both serve the same creator, so it's not an issue. Okay. You see kids with autism repeat movements. Some kids may spin or rock back and forth, may flap their arms or kick. You know who else does that? Captive animals. You know what human beings were created to do over centuries and centuries before the Industrial Revolution? Be active, farm, wrangle animals, herd sheep, repair fences, take care of livestock, take care of family. So here you have kids who are not broken. See, the thing is when you are a child, your natural state is movement. To insist that the state of a child is defective, if they still want to move, if they still have that energy, all that means, if a child is fidgety, is that you haven't broken their spirit yet. The children that you see lined up in desks, perfectly like this, the light from their eyes is already gone. The spirit is already out of their bodies. You've already destroyed their souls. You've already destroyed them. If you see a 4-year-old a 6-year-old, an 8-year-old, who is sitting patiently and quietly. That is a traumatized child. That's not healthy. So what we're already doing is we're taking natural childhood behavior as well as actual distress behaviors that we see in every other animal. I recommend you go to a zoo and you see the tigers. You want to see stimming behavior? Go to a zoo and see what the monkeys do. See them flick themselves, see them flap their arms and that sort of thing. They do it because they're in captivity and they're not correctly stimulated. It's not that they're defective, it's that the circumstances they find themselves are. So let's continue. When I was younger, I walked on my toes and made clicking sounds with my tongue. A therapist taught me how to stop. What's wrong with walking on your toes? If that stretches your arches out. What's wrong with clicking with your tongue? It's been proven that there have been blind people who use clicks and that sort of thing as echolocation. People might not know why they do the things that they do, but the stims and the things that a very intelligent person may do may have a greater purpose that you can't see and that they can't explain because they don't have the words, they're not old enough to understand it, and no one is helping them look in that direction because they're too busy trying to find what is broken versus honoring the natural genius within. Just because a child is not compliant with a false structure of hierarchy and compliance, that does not mean that the child is broken. It means that the system is broken. And the fact that we are pathologizing children as opposed to looking at the system, which we all know is broken, is probably one of the greatest crimes and outcomes of this education system as we have it right now in the United States. Your child is considered normal if they're broken. And if they're not broken, if they still stand up for truth, if they still have any sort of energy or free spirit of their own, or anything that goes outside of compliancy, or within the structure of the narrative scripting, then they're defined as broken and in needing of correction, as opposed to allow. Does it hurt anybody that this person clicks? Does it hurt anybody that they walk on their toes? If it doesn't hurt anybody and it makes the individual comfortable, why must it be corrected by a therapist? I want you to ask yourselves this and get back to me with the answer. Talking and knowing how to act is hard for kids with autism. Some kids with autism just talk a little or not at all. We often don't get jokes. I repeat words and I avoid looking at people. I might talk too loudly or stand too close. Sometimes people stare at me. Kids that are not broken get abused. They have determined that quote-unquote autism symptoms and the symptoms of childhood CPTSD are so similar that they actually cannot be determined. So then the psyop switched again, and then it's, oh, well, CPTSD can mimic autism. So they don't, this is basically hysteria all over again. So back in Freud's era, where he started talking to women and asking what caused their problems, and they said they were molested by their rich fathers or brothers or what have you, Freud decided to take the side of the abusers rather than the abused. We are seeing this right now with the children. Children, okay, speaking from a perspective of a clinical, chaplain, therapist, whatever. I mean, I have my MA through BND. Okay, some kids with autism just talk a little or not at all. If you're constantly silenced and nobody wants to hear your truth, you're going to stop talking. The kid who shows that the emperor has no clothes and doesn't, quote unquote, understand social cues, a natural child's nature, and this is recognized in Islam, is honesty. When someone is trying to pull a child away from that honesty, you're trying to sever them from their core self and from their intellectual discernment. They often don't get jokes. Do they not get jokes, or are they just not funny? A lot of jokes between quote-unquote neurotypicals, which are program people, those that are lesser intelligent, are often mean-spirited and meant to keep social hierarchy. No autistic person, quote-unquote autistic, and no genius who has ever been victimized is ever going to find any joke funny that's going to debase or make another person seem inferior or that they're, less than. And yet that's most of what our jokes are in Western culture. Okay, I repeat words and I avoid looking at people. Well, yeah, because most people are abusive. And you repeat words because maybe you want to better understand them, especially as a child. You tell me a word that I don't know, I'm going to repeat it to make, even as an adult, to make sure to look it up. Now, if they repeat it over and over again, we go back to before the captive animal syndrome. It's a stim that shows captivity. It doesn't show that there's something wrong with the child, it shows that there's something wrong with the environment. This culture blames the victims for the acts of the perpetrators. And the acts of the perpetrators in this case is American culture and society trying to fit children into boxes, cut off everything about them that makes them special, unique, and, well, any little bit feral, and make them into basically automatons that have no feeling, no drive, no energy, no ambition, to the point where when somebody is presented with ambition as an adult, it's so out of the usual because everybody's already been confined to doing what they don't like, what they don't love, what is unethical, and they think that they're forced to do it because the slavery is in the mind. And the slavery begins with propaganda starting in early childhood. So this book is conforming social hierarchy and already telling kids that have been abused, you're wrong. Does this book mean to do that? Oh, absolutely not. Absolutely not. This author had nothing but the best of intentions. I don't think that this is created by the CIA or anything like that. This is created probably by a very good child psychologist who's been studying autism under this framework that was given to them, and they don't have the ability to see outside it, and that's not their fault. So there's no shame on this author here. They did nothing wrong. But let's continue. New foods bother me. I only eat warm foods and I drink only one kind of juice. People with autism only tend to eat their favorites. For most of humanity, we had diets that were relatively stable. We stuck to safe foods because we didn't know what was going to be poisonous or not. A natural instinct to stay to foods that are safe, comforting, and make the stomach feel good, especially if you have other sensitivities that you can't necessarily explain because nobody listens to you, is an adaptation. And when you're in a situation or an environment where you can't control anything else, where everybody's telling you that you're autistic, that you're broken, that you're wrong, if food is the only thing that you can control, you're going to control that. You know what? They're going to tell me that I do everything wrong by flapping my arms and having nervous stims or, not talking or talking too much or making eye contact or not making eye contact or not getting jokes or saying the wrong jokes. That the only thing I can control is what I eat. And you know what? If the only thing that I can eat is dino chicken nuggets and, Mountain Dew, that shows the amount of trauma that we've put these children through. Okay. Kids with autism can be sensitive to light and sound. Loud sounds in big crowds bother me. We go home when it gets too loud. That's the same thing with genius. People of high intellect are sensitive to things that people of low intellect ignore. People of high intellect have greater sensitivities. That's what, it goes hand in hand. You can't have a high intellect without having any sensitivity above the standard, levels, okay? Most people I know who are of genius level IQ cannot handle crowds, cannot handle light noises, cannot handle loud noises or bright lights. It's overstimulating. Our minds are already working 1,000 miles a minute, just trying to cope and survive and trying to appear normal, just so all the normies don't get afraid of us, pathologize us, or treat us like second-class citizens because they can't possibly understand us, because it's just like a frog trying to understand a bird, except we're the same species and we look alike. So as opposed to trying to find relation, the majority of people get to pathologize the minority of people. Let's say under 10% of people have an IQ over 130, and say anybody with an IQ over 130, as opposed to recognizing them as gifted or genius, see them as disabled, broken, and flawed. Being sensitive to touch is common too. I like to wear soft shirts without tags or scratchy seams. My favorite blanket and pillow are super soft. They still have their innate sensitivity. They haven't been forced. Nobody truly wants to wear uncomfortable clothing. The people that they're labeling as autistic are the ones that are putting their foot down and saying, I refuse to wear uncomfortable clothing. Their will is not broken yet. So as opposed to recognizing them for their mental fortitude and resilience, we call them broken, when it's quite the opposite. Everybody else is broken. And the person who's labeled as not wanting to do what goes against your best interest, there's no reason to wear something that's uncomfortable. Everything I'm wearing right now is super soft and comfy. It looks professional enough. It's a hot day. And as far as my sleeves being uncovered, every Sufi is Abd Allah. So although we refuse to be enslaved to other people, we are constantly in service to our Lord. If you read the Quran, the hijab and hijab does apply to both men and women and, well, third space people. The hijab for someone who is an abd ends here, okay? And at the knees. You can research that yourself. I love doing multi-field analysis at any given time. Okay, I like routines, and so do lots of other kids with autism. We get upset when things change. When I travel, I need to bring my juice, snacks, blanket, and pillow. Okay, so you like to be prepared. Other kids don't care about preparedness. Yeah, that's a high IQ trait. After worker cleaned our hotel room, I couldn't find my pillow. It was in the closet with a new pillowcase on it. I put my old soft pillowcase back on. Yeah, somebody touched their things. You don't just touch somebody's things, even if they're a child. That's their things. People like to have their stuff the way that they have it. That means that their boundaries haven't been broken yet. Children who are compliant are perfectly okay with their boundaries being broken. When people have loose boundaries, they're easier to control and manipulate. Mom and Dad make sure I don't get bored when I travel. I have so much fun. Yeah, high intellect people cannot stand being bored. Like everyone, kids with autism have their own talents. I'm good with computers, and I can find lots of facts in only minutes. Oh, so you admit that they're actually intelligent, more so than average people. Okay. My class at school is small. A teacher's helper is with me all day. She helps me learn. I join other classes for art, gym, and band. I do not feel like I belong. All the other kids know each other. That's the same thing with, genius. The genius is always going to stand out. There's no need, and a lot of geniuses learn better one-on-one with an aide. Stop calling me, whoever you are. Go away. Okay, so continuing. So we have an aide working with somebody one-on-one. Now, we talked about this yesterday, where the gifted program for the Middle East or for, German children through Braucherei is a one-on-one mentor to student apprenticeship. This genius has always been best taught individually by private tutors. So we have to simulate this in a pathologized environment for children that are of higher intellect and higher sensitivity, and then say that they're disabled. Now, I want you to ask Robert Schweier about this because he's worked with the profoundly disabled, and I'm sure that he can tell you the difference between someone who is labeled autistic of a high IQ versus someone who is actually profoundly autistic, who cannot function without an aid, who cannot function to even put on their socks in the morning or feed themselves. There is no condition that has such a diverse amount of symptoms. Think about the taxonomy of birds. Are you going to put a robin and a red-tailed hawk in the same category? Then why would you put someone who is completely unable to function, unable to feed themselves or defecate without help in the same category as Einstein? And why did you allow people to override your own discernment to teach you that this was okay and this is all one condition when it's not? Actual autistics who have real problems are getting less help because of the pathologization of the gifted and the traumatized, of those who still have mental fortitude and are unbroken by repeated attempts to get them to sever their sense of inner integrity and their own spirits. It'd be hard for kids with autism to make friends. I have been invited to only one birthday party. I ask kids to play with me, but they don't want to, so I play alone. Same thing with genius. That's not an illness, that's just being isolated from people of your own peer group. If people don't understand you because they're not on your level, they're not going to accept you. It doesn't matter. I'm happy that I joined a science club after school. The kids there made sure I wasn't left out. We worked as a team. They listened to my ideas. It was great. So there's no problem with socialization if you put a child with their actual peers. Wow. Okay. Guess what? I finally got invited to play at someone's house. I didn't get the jokes the kids were telling, but I had fun, so did they. I think I'll have lots of friends when I grow up. God willing, kid. God willing, imaginary kid. And then, let's see. This is written by a little boy. Look, this was written by a child, writing about how he thinks that he's different than everybody else. A child wrote this. Wow. Whoever this kid is, Zen. Hi, I'm Zen. I live in Long Island, New York with my dad, my mom, my brother, and sister. I'm the youngest. I love playing with games on my computer and playing with my dog, Buddy. I'm smart, honest, and kind. Zen is smart, honest, and kind. When people are sad, I try to make them smile. My favorite class is art class. My favorite color is blue. I'm proud of who I am and what I've learned. I want this boy to learn that he's a genius. That normal kids who look like this don't write books normally. This child is not broken. This child is exemplary. And they're working under a framework where they're told that there's something unusual and wrong about them and they're not told the truth. Respecting people with autism. Treat a person with autism like you would any person. Be friendly, kind, and understanding. Do not tease or bully them. Same thing with somebody with genius. When you meet someone with autism, be friendly and say hi. Don't ignore them and walk away. Don't do that to anybody. Be calm and nice when spending time with someone with autism. Try not to get frustrated or yell. Just because they don't conform to your inner narratives of how you think scripted conversation should go, just because they tell you, oh, hi, how are you? And they actually answer with the real answer of how they feel for their day and actually tell you because they think that you actually care. Oh no, you've been called out as a fake-ass person with no integrity. Oops, you already had your spirit broken. Because if you're judging somebody for being honest and authentic and having energies and talents and abilities that you don't, and having an inability to understand your lowbrow humor, that's your problem. That's not the problem of this, delightful young man here. Okay. If a kid with autism is talking loudly, don't stare, laugh, or point at them. Just listen to what they are saying. Want to know why? Because you're probably right. Want to know why they're talking loudly? Because you're not listening to them. You're too busy repeating the scripts. No two people in the world are exactly the same. Each person has things they're good at and things that they like to do. This is also true for people with autism. Replace autism with genius. This boy is a genius, and he's under a framework thinking that he is broken. Let's see when this book was published. This book was published, man, I need bifocals, 1975. Wait, no, 2021. It's hard to tell. Shu Martin C., 1975 author, Muniz illustrator, Zen and his family. When was this actually? So this looks like it was actually made in 1970. No, this can't be from 1975 because there wasn't video games back then. Meet Zen, he loves to draw and play video games. He has autism, Zen is real, and so are his experiences. Learn about his life in his illustrative, narrative, non-fiction picture book for elementary school students. Okay. Library of Congress, cataloging and public data. Oh, so Murray C. was born in 1975. So this was written, okay, in 2021, okay? So this child would probably be in their teen years now, and, I hope that if he does actually see this, he probably won't, but he doesn't get offended by anything that I said here. Son, you're a genius. You're not broken. Helpful terms, autism spectrum. The wide number of ways that autism affects how a person talks, feels, or acts. Autism is a condition of the brain. People with autism have a hard time making friends, getting to know other people, and the spectrum means autism affects each person differently. If it affects each person differently, then how's it one condition? Dude. Routine, a regular way or pattern of doing things at the same time. You mean like the military does? Sensitive, easily hurt or affected by small changes or differences. Sensitive, the ability to perceive small changes or differences in your environment. Increased sensitivity, that's an asset. You're not numb, you're not dull, and you're not dead inside. Talent, something a person is good at doing. Funny, this is the only medical condition that comes with added talents. Therapist, a person who's trained to help people with conditions, disorders, and illnesses learn new skills. In this context, let's say breaker. Just like you break a horse, they're breaking children. Be more like other children and destroying genius. So, that is book one. I'm going to take a small break. I'm going to come back and we're going to get into this book here for older children in just a moment. So with that being said, Assalamu alaikum, Khoda Hafez, Guten Abend, and Auf Wiedersehen. Assalamu alaikum.